Hey, Valerie, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Oh, it's great to get a chance to chat with you again, but not just chat with you because we chat regularly, but to get a chance to chat with you in a way that I can pick your brain, find out some cool stuff, and share it with my listeners. So thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'm really curious to get into this forthcoming project, but I want to talk about an existing project that you've been working on. But I need to take it back to your working as a story grid editor and what that has been and how how that's affected your own writing. So where did it all begin for you? Like, how did you get into story grid, and what is story grid anyways?
StoryGrid it's like the way I describe it, it's like a secret decoder ring for story theory. Okay.
Okay.
So back in, I think it was 2015, I had finished my first book, my first novel, which was a middle grade fantasy. And that was written on instinct. It was just me having read a zillion books. I always wanted to write a novel. And finally, I turned 40 and said, that's it. I have to do it. So I finally finished it. And it was December 23rd. And I thought, okay, there are parts of this book that are still making my spidey senses tingle, but I can't do anything more with it. So I'm closing this one. The manuscript is locked. I'm going to start a new book.
Right.
But please, God, send me the teacher that I need, because I couldn't find anyone who had the answers to my questions. So I was changing scenes,
Okay.
easy to change it, but I wasn't necessarily improving anything. So that was December 23rd. January 2nd, I saw Sean on the Creative Pen podcast with Joanna. And I never heard of this guy before in my life. I said, I don't know who this dude is, but he knows stuff that I don't know. So he was blogging the Story Grid, What Good Editors Know at the time. So I started to follow the blog. 95% of it went right over my head. but as I was reading his posts, I thought, this is good stuff. If I can stick with this and figure this out, these are the answers to the questions that I created when I wrote my first novel. So then in February 2017, he held an in-person training with Tim Grahl in New York. And that was the love story workshop. And I was writing a love story at the time. So I went to that. It was 2 days. I was so tired at the end, I couldn't even speak. I was
Really?
intellectually exhausted. But my writing just from that 2 day seminar took a quantum leap just in that 2 days. And I thought, okay, I'm sticking with this guy. He still knows more than I do. I can see how much better my writing is just with those basics in hand. So when they opened up and decided to certify editors, because there's only one Sean, and he was inundated with people wanting to work with him, and there's only so many hours in the day. And he said, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I have other people trained in my method who
Right.
can go out and help writers on my behalf. So I joined them in September 2017 and became a certified editor. And I was off to the races. I'm helping writers with their books, but I'm also applying all of these lessons to my own work. And every writing session, I'm learning a little more. I'm getting a little better. It's not magic, but it's as cool as magic.
So I want to take that back, and we always talk to writers about the value yourself, invest in yourself. So I have to say, so you didn't just go to find an editor you could work with to help your writing make it better. You invested significantly. You went to New York City for, like, it wasn't free to get there. It wasn't free to get in the room. It was, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of expense, and then worked this, and then took it a step further to get certified, which I'm sure there's an investment involved in that whole process, not just a lot of time. And then you're not only what I love about this is you're not only making your own writing better by understanding this process and living and breathing it, but as I understand it, you having worked with so many different authors, applying this every time you help them, you help yourself, right? Because you're learning. Is that
Yes, every time I learn from, and here's something too that writers, when I say this out loud, I'm sure everyone listening will go, oh, well, yeah, of course. But until you stop and think about it, most people don't do it. So we all started out as fans of books, as avid readers.
right?
So we're reading books like readers. When you make that conscious choice to become a writer, you've got to start consuming stories across medium as a writer. So that means you're looking at things through a very different lens. So I kind of draw a line in the sand, everything I read and watched and consumed before StoryGrid and everything after.
Wow.
Because you just see things so differently. You see, like when I came at this, it was all just a big mystery, right? How on earth do people write stories? Now I know how. Now it's still wondrous to me. I haven't lost my love of story. I have not yet become jaded or any of that. To me, this is a hoot and a half, Mark. It really is. I get up in the morning and I think, I get to go to the office and like make shit up all day. This is great.
That's fantastic.
People pay me for this.
I love that. I'm tempted to ask if have you gone back and reread favorite novels with the StoryGrid hat on in mind
Yep.
to mix metaphors?
Yep, I sure have. And so there's a little bit of a job hazard when you really understand story, is you can see the technique of other authors and you can evaluate it. Now, it doesn't make me love those novels any less, because there's still something beyond the craft. There's still the artistry there that resonates with me.
Right. Okay.
So, and I am certainly not going to critique any A-list author. I mean, I can be audacious, but I'm not that audacious.
Right. I do have to ask, does The Princess Bride hold up when you hold it under the
Sure does.
Good. Okay.
Sure does.
All is right with the world then. Okay, good.
That was one of the books I was afraid to reread.
Yeah.
There's been a few where I thought, there's been a few where I thought, I don't want to know. Like the movie Waking Ned Divine. We did that on the Roundtable podcast years ago. And if I'm being honest, there was always something funny about the end that I could never put my finger on. And there was always one spot in the movie that's when I would get up and get another drink. Now I know why I would. Have you seen the movie?
No.
Okay. You got to see it.
Now
It's
I know.
hilarious.
Now I'll have to know where I can go to the bathroom or get a drink.
That's right. It's a dream sequence. You've heard like to avoid the dream sequences, right?
Right.
Well, there's a reason, because they tend to be not as interesting. Now, any of the storytelling techniques, when I first got into this, I used to think, well, these are the good ones and these are the bad ones. I've changed my thinking on that completely. The storytelling tools and techniques are what they are. There aren't good ones and bad ones. What we need to do as writers, our job is to understand what they are and how they work, so that we can select the ones that we need to shape the story in the way we want to shape it, as though we're sculptors.
Oh, okay.
Right? There's not, a hammer is not better than a saw. They're different tools that do different things.
I love that. Thank you. That is awesome.
You're welcome.
So you had mentioned this romance you were working on. Is that the romance that I'm thinking of?
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness. So let's talk about, because I know that you've taken a step back from, helping other writers and wanting to spend more time helping yourself. I understand that 100%. Right? So much time doing all this other stuff that you're like, what drew me here? I love storytelling. I love writing. So let's talk about Masquerade, because the premise is genius, but I also love the way you originally rolled it out. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, it started back in 2016 when I was at a dinner party with a bunch of girlfriends who all used to be readers, but they had reached a point in their lives where they had busy careers, they had young kids, they were, in marriages they were trying to keep together, they were volunteering in their community, their plates were full. And when they looked at a book, when they looked at a novel, it looked like more work to them.
Right.
They would get to the end of they didn't need more work. They had plenty of work. And I said, well, what if I wrote a story in short parts? And this is pretty common now. If you look at Amazon, there's all these serialized novels.
Yeah.
Okay. They weren't out there when I had this idea, but clearly other authors were having the same experience as me. So it started just as an experiment, and I wrote Masquerade in 12 parts. And I wrote the first 3 parts and gave them to a few friends and said, what do you think? Like, is this worth continuing? Is this fun? Is this helping you unwind at the end of the day? Right. Or are you only reading this because I'm your friend and this is yet more work that a friend is giving you? How are you feeling? And these are women that I trusted and I knew would tell me the honest truth. And they would also tell me if they didn't have time to read it, Valerie, thanks, but like I got my own career to worry about. You worry about yours, I'll worry about mine. So they came back to me and, not to toot my own horn, but toot, without exception, they said to me, Valerie, you've got to finish this book. This is fantastic. So each part is about 10,000 words or so. Like there's a couple of them are a bit more, a couple of them are a bit less, but my aim was to have about 10,000 words, which is, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes of reading.
Right.
It's not a lot. And I've designed the chapters to read very quickly. They tend to be very short. Sean calls it potato chip length.
Oh, I love that. And you just want just one more, right?
Just one more. It's like comedians in cars getting coffee.
Yes.
Those episodes are potato chip length.
Oh, they are.
Where you think, I can just watch one more episode. And before you know it, you've been there for 4 hours. Right?
Yeah. Or writing
so
I designed podcast, right?
That's right. Just one more. So that's how I designed the book. And one of my friends, Melanie, sat down to it. She said, all right, I'm really going to test this. And she had little twins at the time. She had a big, fancy executive job. And she crawled in bed, exhausted. And her husband said, turn out the light and go to bed. She said, no, I'm testing this for Valerie. And she had all 3 parts. Well, she read all 3 parts in a row. And she was exhausted. And when I heard that from her, and she's a straight talker, she wouldn't sugarcoat it. If that wasn't true, she wouldn't say it.
Right.
I thought, I'm onto something. So there are 12 parts that you can get individually. You can easily read them on a phone. You can read them if you're in the dentist office or if you're waiting for a kid to get out of rehearsal or soccer practice. But then earlier this year, I packaged them as one group. So they came out in like 2016, 2017. In 2021, they're now available as a digital box set, but they're also in hard copy. So there's the beautiful hardcover.
That's gorgeous.
I'm so pleased with it. You have no idea.
It's like 120,000 words then, isn't it? It's a...
Yes.
Wow.
It's 500 pages. It's 500 pages.
Wow.
So it makes a lovely Christmas gift, Mark.
I think I know someone I'm buying it for.
Well, like some people prefer they want the book in their hands. And I understand that because there are times I prefer to read the print. Like I want my eyes to have a break from the electronics. Now I got lots of books on my e-reader,
right,
but I also like books in paper in certain situations, right? If I'm going to a cabin or if I just want to unplug for the weekend, I'll have a print book. So they're paperback, hardback, and digital right now. So it's fun.
Let's talk about the premise of Masquerade and the genre, etc. Well, we know it's in the romance genre, but let's tell us a little bit about that. And there was also a tagline I remember when we were talking before that you used, probably based on your executive friend, about who these stories were for.
My lips will remain sealed on the inspiration for the tagline. But here's the tagline. What would you do if you knew you wouldn't get caught? And this is the type of stuff women chat about, right? When they're out together and they're having a few drinks, we're not actually going to do any of it, but you just sort of engage in that fantastical thinking. What would you do? I mean, for me, I'd probably try and get backstage at like a Duran Duran concert, or if the Bee Gees were still, rest their souls, 2 of them, if they were still performing. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I'd do. But that's not the kind of stuff my characters get up to.
No, so what do your characters get up to? What is going on here?
So it's
They're
told
gonna
from
get
two
caught
points of
cheating on
view.
their taxes?
No, that's no. that's that's a thriller. That would be a crime story, not a story I would write. I guarantee you that. It's told from two points of view, the male and female points of view, Isla and Colin. Okay, so Isla is in the process of getting divorced. She's a top executive. She's an engineer, so she's in a male-dominated field,
Right.
and not really being taken as seriously as she ought to be. So she's quite frustrated. Colin
Which
is,
is pretty much any industry, let's be honest, for women.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Colin is he's a married guy. Okay, so I am breaking a rule of the romance genre right there. So in certain romance genres, because there's a zillion subgenres. Okay,
Right.
so he's a married guy. He's been trying really hard to keep his marriage going because he's got two kids, and he's a good guy. And his wife at one point was probably a great woman, but they're not great together. I mean, we all know people like this, that they're both wonderful people, but they bring out the worst in each other.
Right.
And it would be better for everyone if they just called it a day. So what happens is the book opens, the series opens at a masquerade ball on Halloween. And
the best time of year.
That's right. That's right. And they get these anonymous invitations to a masquerade ball held by this company called Seduction. They're given false identities. So Isla becomes Grace, Colin becomes Marlowe. It's very much a Jane Austen type of ball.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's the sensation that it's evoking. And I can actually read the little scene at the end where the whole thing is set up. Would you like me to read a little bit?
That would be cool. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what hooked me.
So that's the setup, and there are two employees of Seduction called Adam and Eve, which, surprise, surprise, is not their real names.
They're not their real names?
Not their real names. In fact, a lot of people have asked me what happens with them. So at some point I may write their story. There's another character in there named Gina, who I love. Readers have asked what happens with her, so she might get her own story. Okay, so this is the masquerade ball where they meet. Okay. This is the end of part 1, okay? And Eve is speaking here. I can arrange it so that you and Grace can escape for a little while, and no one will ever find out. Would you like that? His breath quickened in anticipation. Tell me, Marlowe, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't get caught? He swallowed hard, not daring to meet her eye, not daring to answer the question even to himself. Tonight has been a pleasant distraction for you, I believe. What if you could do it again? No consequences. Finally, Colin spoke, his voice less steady than he'd have liked. What are you saying? There's more to seduction than meets the eye, Marlowe. Her wide eyes had a sharpness to them he hadn't noticed before. Follow 3 simple rules, and this fantasy will become your reality. You and Grace will be together. Alcohol clouded his mind. You've aroused her, said Eve, nodding toward Grace on the dance floor. Surely you can feel it. He did feel it. No consequences? He asked. For either of us? Eve's softness returned. In all the years that Seduction has been providing this service, you're the first person to ask about the other's welfare. You're a good man, that's plain to see. A good man in need of a little attention. She wiped a drip of wine from the rim of her glass before continuing. To answer your question, there will be no consequences for Grace either, provided she abides by the rules of the game just as you will have to do. His hands tingled with excitement. And what are the rules? He asked. First, you must not reveal your true identities to each other. Second, you agree to meet once a month, every month, for a year, and only at the rendezvous points Seduction arranges. And third, you must not fall in love. He raised an eyebrow. Take care, Marlowe, she said. The last one is the hardest to follow. If either of you break any of the rules, seduction cannot guarantee secrecy. All bets will be off, and there will be repercussions. Colin cast a glance back to the dance floor, to the place where Grace and Adam had been. You won't see her anymore tonight, but I can arrange another meeting soon, if you agree, that is. He didn't hesitate. This night, this escape, that woman, he wanted them all. I agree, he said. Eve clinked her glass against his. It's settled then. Adam will take you home now. I'll be in touch.
Wow, that was cool.
And for those of you watching on video, I just want to show one thing. I created these in Ingram Spark. The PDF was done with Vellum. I love Vellum.
Yes.
I can't wait for them to have affiliate links.
Yes.
For those of you watching on video, I had a designer do
Oh, wow.
some designs, I guess not decorations,
Wow.
to mark the difference between each part. So it starts in October.
Wow.
So there's one for October,
Yeah,
one for November,
I was
one for
reading
December.
the ebook, so I didn't get the benefit of that glorious.
I didn't put them in the ebook because they didn't work well.
No, they don't work as well as they do in print. Those are gorgeous.
No, so yeah, so the print versions are very pretty.
So I love that. So let's talk about your target audience for this. It's obvious it's romance fantasy. Even setting it up with the Masquerade and setting it up with the Jane Austen sort of the gala and all of this larger than life and in that sort of the love is they're obviously gonna fall in love. We know this, right? We know this.
And they're gonna have sex, lots of it.
They have to. That's just the rule.
That's right.
So I love that setup. It is very cliffhanger-esque, like you're satisfied. So it's kind of like you're satisfied, but you want one more and you go, oh, I got to get the next book, because that's how I was reading them fortunately I didn't have to wait. Fortunately, I could just get the next one. But you had designed them. I'm not your target audience. Middle-aged cis white male, not your target audience. Who was your target audience for this?
Well, you say that, but there's a lot of guys who read this book. A lot. I was thinking about women my age. I was thinking about my group of friends who were at that dinner party that night.
Okay.
So women in their late 30s, 40s, even into their 50s, who have enough work. What they want is an escape. Yeah. They just want a half hour with nobody touching them, nobody asking them where is the such and such, nobody needing anything from them, just a half hour where they can withdraw, unwind, put their feet up, have a glass of wine, read a book. It's not I think it's well written, but it's not a heavy intellectual nonfiction book that they got to read for the office, right? It's an escape. It's a total escape.
Cool.
So that was one of the things as a reader. A lot of the romance novels have much younger characters, in their 20s, sometimes 30s. Well, I am now 51, and in my 40s, I was like, this is great, but I don't have anything in common with a 20-year-old anymore, or the 25-year-old anymore. And there was one book that I actually recommended for my book club. I have an online book club that anyone can join. I focus on books by, for, and about women. And so I picked a romance, and the protagonist was, 22 or something. And I was completely distracted by the fact that everything she ate was a carb. And I thought, okay, this is not working for me anymore. And she had purse wine, which made me text my niece, who's 23, and say, Meredith, is this a real thing? Should I be worried about you? Are you and your friends going around with open bottles of wine in your great big huge purses? So
and I bet you she did not make noises when she got in and out of chairs.
No, that's right, exactly. She doesn't need to push herself up from the handles. So my protagonists are in their 40s. They have real lives, they have real responsibilities. Right. And Colin in particular, and I mentioned it earlier, Colin's married. So he's actually having an affair in this book. That's not something you typically find in a romance. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you're not going to see
Good.
Mr. Darcy doing that. But it reflects more of uh, what people are actually dealing with.
Right.
So I call it, yes, it's in the romance category on Amazon, but it's more of a love story as opposed to being shoehorned
Right.
into the the romance category that people would think. I mean, I have tremendous respect for writers like Barbara Freethy. I'm a big fan of hers.
Oh, me too.
But my books aren't like hers.
Yeah.
They're a little different. Yeah.
So that was the other thing is, so for me as a reader, again, we talked about the fact that I'm not your ideal reader, and yet men really love this.
Yep.
Colin works in publishing and
Publishing.
and so that to me is a gigantic, what Christine Catherine Rush calls a reader cookie, because the publisher you made up, I love that. He's working with a celebrity, and it's all the stuff I know about the publishing industry. I'm just so fascinated. So the subplot that has nothing to do with the love is really entertaining and stuff I'm also looking forward to, as I continue to read it.
Well, there's actually 5 plot lines going on in this story. So there's the main love story, but then of course there's Colin and work, and Colin and his wife, and there's Isla and her husband, and Isla and work. So there's the 5. They each have work. They each have their
she has
real
all
lives.
kinds of stuff going on, work related. That's kind of frightening and pretty disastrous. But yeah, and then her ex keeps showing up as well. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this. Well, I mean, again, it's 120,000 words approximately. So
yeah, it's meaty. It's meaty.
So people can appreciate it. They can get it in chunks if they want. They can get all of it at once if they want. They could also they get it in paperback and get it in hardcover, so they can read it in whatever format they want. They can ask for it at their favorite local library, I'm sure too.
It's available for libraries, so if your library doesn't have it, they can order it in for you.
Cool. So this is cool. I love that you're doing this, but I want to get into, so you've got this really cool project. The next book that I know that you're working on now, that is going to be coming out in the future, is not spicy romance.
No.
What are you working on now?
So anyone who follows your podcast or any of the writing related podcasts will have heard that you need to pick a genre and stay in it and write a whole bunch of books. Okay, so that doesn't work for me. I wrote Masquerade because that's the book I wanted to read at the time.
Right.
But then, as we talked about story grids, so part of my certification project was I had to analyze a masterwork according to the story grid method, so to prove that I knew how to do this thing. So I picked Dracula. Now, this is one of those things, Mark. I was just sitting in the training room. Sean was in front of me, and the title Dracula just popped in my head. Where that came from, no idea. Wow. And it wouldn't leave me alone until I said out loud, okay, I'll analyze Dracula. Dracula's 160,000 words. I recommend picking something like Animal Farm, which is super short.
Exactly. Or Heart of Darkness or something.
Exactly. Dracula is a big, big book. So when I analyzed it, I actually discovered that, it loses steam at the end of the novel. Also, I think the character of Dracula has been done a great disservice in our story, in our modern storytelling. I think that he is one of the great literary characters, and he is seen sort of as a two-dimensional villain. Well, if you bring him into the 21st century, and this is one of the reasons we're still reading this book, because there's enough in him to still make him interesting all these years later, 100 and however many years it's been. It's published in 1897, so I'm not going to do math on live right now. I can't. Yeah. I wouldn't dare. But he is still a really, really interesting character. So in my exhausted state, I said to Sean Coyne, hey, wouldn't it be great if we rewrote Dracula according to story grid principles? And he said, yeah, that's an interesting project, but it's an intellectual exercise. And he was right. He said, why not take that idea and turn it into a novel, a new story that people really want to read and that they haven't read before. Very good idea, right? Very good idea. So I went away and started to noodle on this. And I've come up with a story. The novel's called Immortal. So it's, if Anne Rice had written Gone Girl, it would be Immortal. So it's a, yes, there's sex in it. It's a vampire book. It's not a Stephanie Meyer style vampire book. It's an Anne Rice style vampire book.
A meteor type of a vampire. Yeah. Okay.
Gritty. It's a thriller. It's not a love story. And when the vampire is a villain or a monster or something other than the love object in a relationship, the sex that's in it, like the way Stoker has developed the love stories in his novels, they're obsession love stories. They're all about the sex, which for vampires is a very different thing than it is for humans. So Dracula is in it, of course. But my protagonist again is a woman, Tamsin Sheffield, who again is in her 40s. Are you seeing a theme yet?
Is she an engineer too? No.
She's not. She's a writer. Okay. I didn't go too far afield with her, because with Immortal, it's the structure of the story is complicated because Tamsin finds a manuscript, an old manuscript, which it's not the Dracula novel, but it's from the point of view of someone who was there when it happened.
Okay.
And she's telling the real story of what happened. And she's sort of explaining to Stoker that he's been sold a bill of goods. She knows what story he's repeating, but because she heard that too, and she knows it's not quite right. So that is embedded within my novel.
See, this is very Anne Rice, right? The embedded story within a story.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Princess Bride too, right? So.
Anne Rice is amazing. I've been a fan of hers since I was about 11. I think I was 11 or 12 when I read Interview with the Vampire. Way too young to read Interview with the Vampire.
It's a good read for an 11-year-old.
No, not.
To be an advanced reader for that.
Scared me half to death. Claudia is a creepy vampire. That's all I have to say. I don't know if I can top Claudia, but I got some good creepy stuff happening in there for fans of vampire fiction. So my character, so it's a story within a story within a story. So, and it's nonlinear. So just learning how to write a story with that structure meant that I said, I'm just going to make Tamsin a writer because I don't have to research what that's about. I'm busy researching how to do nested stories, because the trick, Mark, and this is true for anyone who's writing from multiple points of view or anyone who's writing multiple storylines in a book. The trick is to make each storyline so compelling that your reader won't mind coming back to it. Right. Because what tends to happen, and the trap that we can all fall into, is we get our reader hooked on a storyline, and then we yank them away from that storyline, and we have to hook them again in another storyline. Right. Or a third storyline, or however many we have going. And that becomes very difficult because you're constantly having to hook your audience over and over and over again. Right. So what I've done, and it's working so far, knock on wood, what I've done is make one storyline feed off the other. And this is a technique that's used in a lot of books as well. If you start to read novels that have, and I'm struggling to think of an example right now, I'm blank, but any novel that has a multiple storyline, if you're writing a multiple storyline, examine the technique of the author. And examine your reaction as a reader. When are you putting down the book? Do you feel grumpy that you got yanked away from this storyline because you really want to find out what's happening? Are you anxious to get back to that story? Or are you skipping through other storylines to get back to the one you're really interested in? Right. Because that's valuable information. So by having one of them inform the other, it doesn't matter which storyline you're in, you're getting information, because there's one storyline arcing over the whole book.
Right.
And then the smaller storylines are feeding into it. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm doing with Immortal.
Wow. So that, and
And
that's like a very much a passion, like it's something you're very, very into, right?
yeah, well, I took my first draft. I spent 18 months on it and realized I was barking up the wrong tree. I pitched the whole thing and started from scratch.
Whoa,
So,
what, you threw everything? Wow.
yes, yes, it was a heartbreaking day, but it had to be done because I wasn't a good enough writer yet.
Right.
I had to do that first draft and see the problems in it to even, because then I had again, like I said, with my first book, I came up with the list of questions that I could go find answers to. So with Immortal, my first draft, those first 18 months was making me recognize the topics that I had to go and study. Because in doing that, I realized, oh, I have to learn how to do multiple storylines.
Right.
Okay. I haven't studied that yet. Let me go study that.
So you strike me as the kind of person who has the choice of taking an escalator up the mountain or taking the long, hard path that's going to take a really long time. It's going to hurt, but you're going to get the most amazing views possible. I'm guessing you're like, well, the escalator kind of has its own merits, but see you at the top later on.
It's all about the journey, right?
Yeah.
It's all about the journey and what you learn on the way. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So what are some of the, well, I do want to ask then, so what are some of the things that you've learned in, Masquerade and Immortal and in the writing that you've done, and even the writing you've done and thrown away? What are some of the things that you would go back to, young Val, who wanted to write? That's like, I'm going to write. I have these ideas for stories. What advice would you want her to come in knowing?
Well, one of my big aha moments was that there isn't an infinite amount of story theory. It feels like there is when you're coming into this. It's overwhelming. You think, oh my God, how am I ever going to figure all this out? This is bonkers. There are only, there's a set number of concepts. Now, the tricky part is that everyone refers to it a little differently because everyone is learning this as they go. Like if we were accountants, we would go and we would learn the generally accepted accounting principles. We would learn what a debit is. We would learn what a credit is. Right. And there would be no more conversation about it. That's not how our craft is emerging. So if we look at a story spine or even a scene spine, with story grid, that's called the 5 commandments. Those who follow Dwight V. Swain, that's scene and sequel. Other people like Aaron Sorkin refers to it as intention and obstacle. It's the same concept, all explained in a little different ways. So first be reassured that there is a finite number of storytelling principles and learn them and know them. Because if you just learn the fundamentals, your story will take a quantum leap. It will suddenly be so much better than 90% of the other books on the market. There are, I checked a little while ago, Mark, and there are more than 57 million books on Amazon right now. 57 million, that's nuts. Oh. Right? So you've got to learn how to market in order to get people's eyeballs on your book. But then when you get them and you get their eyeballs on your book, you've got to keep them. You've got to get them hooked in your story. Right. You got to get them to read all the way to the end. And then you got to get them to recommend your book to their friend. That's only going to happen if you know how to write a story. And it doesn't mean that you need to spend 10 years studying story theory. When I did Masquerade, all I focused on was the spine, the 5 commandments of storytelling, because that's all I could wrap my head around with the story grid method. Right. Because I was learning on my own. So since that came out, between then and my next book, Immortal, that's when I did a whole bunch of learning. It was like I went to college. Yeah. And now I've graduated from the college, and now this is my thesis. This is the big project.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited. I can't wait to get my hands on Immortal, but I will be patient. Now, Valerie, please let my listeners know where they can find out more about you, where they can check out your books, etc.
Everything is on my website, valeriefrancis.ca. And I have an inner circle there that if you join, there's 70 some odd episodes of an unpodcast that I call Up. And I call it an unpodcast because the only place you can get it is from my mailing list. So there's all kinds of story theory goodness. And my niche as a writer is putting story theory into practice and making it practical and applicable. So it's plain language stuff. There's a lot of good content there. And if you want to learn more about books, if you're looking for a great read, I've got a book club that you can sign up to, and every month I'll email you with my book recommendation.
Awesome. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me today.
You're welcome. This was fun. Anytime.